Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the Mixed Martial Arts channel. We are here today to do a quick prediction video for UFC Seattle Henry Cejudo versus Song Yadong. So, I will preface this. Also, I will say there's going to be chapters at the bottom of the along the timeline of the video. So if you're looking for a particular prediction, you can go ahead and skip to wherever in the video you are looking for the particular prediction of. But this is going to be I'm going to start with the first fight on the card, the main event, make my way down to the very last prelim, or the first prelim, which is, if you're watching the fight on the day, it'll be the first fight of the night. I will be very intelligible and knowledgeable and somewhat researched on what I say about the main event and the main card fights, but the closer we get to the bottom of the card, the more I advise you to take what I say with a grain of salt, as I will be talking more based off of just looking at their records and stuff like that, and their statistics, and less about the guys that I've actually watched, because the closer we get to the bottom, the less I will have seen of the guys. Maybe I've only seen one of their fights. I believe there is some UFC debutants on this card, so I won't have seen any of those guys' fights, but still, I will do my best to look at the statistics and their previous fights and the records of their opponents, etc., and hopefully give you a good prediction that you can take into account when you watch the card this Saturday. So, let's get straight into it with the main event of Henry Cejudo versus Song Yadong. So this is a tough fight to predict, if you ask me. My heart wants to pick Henry, but he's getting old, man. He's getting really old. He just turned 38 a couple weeks ago. He's lost his last two fights in a row, but they have obviously been against Aljamain Sterling and Merab Dvalishvili back-to-back, and they were both close fights that he did very well in at moments. Song Yadong obviously doesn't have the credentials of both those guys, but he is one of the more talented prospects in the bantamweight division. Just lost to Piotr Yan in his last fight, but before that, man, he had been on a 3-fight win streak, then lost the Sandhagen fight by a doctor stoppage, and then won 2 more fights directly after that. I really would like to say that I want to pick Song based on his credentials and how underrated his UFC run is. Like, he's literally lost to Kyler Phillips in a decision years ago. 3 years ago, lost to Sandhagen in a decision, in a doctor stoppage, which is questionable, and then lost a respectable decision to Piotr Yan, in which he did fight Piotr Yan somewhat decently, but Yan was injured in that fight, and that's something to take into account. If Yan was able to do that to Song Yadong while he was injured, maybe Henry Cejudo, if he's not injured this weekend, is going to do a lot better. So I think I am going to have to go ahead and stick with my pick of Henry. I just feel like, obviously, there is a big gap where he left May 2020 and came back in May 2023. He left when he was 33 and came back when he was 36, I believe. Wasted a lot of his prime, maybe 32 was when he left. But I really can't help but just think, while Henry is not as good as he used to be, possibly, or either that or the division's just moved on a little bit in terms of talent in those 3 years he was gone, and guys like Aljo and Merab coming up through the rankings are just better than the guys that were around in the bantamweight division in 2020 when Henry retired. I do think that Song is going to be a tough fight for him. I could certainly see this fight going to a decision as well. It's a 5-round fight, obviously main event. I could see this being a decision. I don't know if I trust the finishing capabilities of Henry anymore. Obviously, he had very good finishing capabilities previously, but now I'm questioning whether he has those capabilities still. So I'm not too sure, but I think I'm going to trust my gut here and say Henry Cejudo by a unanimous decision over Song Yadong. Okay, next fight down on the card. So, Brendan Allen versus Anthony Hernandez. This is an interesting fight. So, for those who don't know, this is a rematch. This fight has already taken place before. Brendan Allen and Anthony Hernandez have fought each other in the LFA, I want to say. That was in, LFA 2018. So Anthony Hernandez got the win there over Brendan Allen. It was a 5-round fight as well. So this is only going to be a 3-round fight, which I would say I think favors Brendan Allen based on Hernandez's strategy. Relies a little bit on gas tank and kind of just out-wrestling you for long periods of time. But Hernandez is on a really good run right now, so he lost to Kevin Holland in his... he lost to Marcus Perez, in his UFC debut, and then he lost to Kevin Holland 2 fights later, and since then, he has been on a 6 fight win streak with 5 finishes. The only guy going to a decision with is Josh Fremd, which is kind of a weird guy to actually take to a decision, considering I believe he's been finished a lot. No. He hasn't really. Josh Fremd has lost 3 decisions and 3 finishes. Fair. He got finished by Kopylov, Trezeguet, and Gregory Rodriguez. Okay, fair. Yeah, he didn't get finished by Andre Petroski, which is good. That would have been a bit more worrying if Andre Petroski had got a finish over him and Hernandez didn't, but I can put some respect behind that. But finishes over Rodolfo Vieira, Marc-Andre Barrio, Edmund Shabazian, Kopylov, and Pereira. That Kopylov fight is honestly the big one that stands out to me the most. That performance is insane. Kopylov is already back on the horse after that loss. He's beaten Cesar Almeida in a split decision, but it was a close fight, but he still won that. And then Chris Curtis, obviously, some people think it's bullshit, that Chris Curtis fight, the finish being right at the end of the fight. I can see why the finish happened, but end of the day, he was going to win the decision regardless, okay? The judges had him winning that decision anyway, so it is what it is. But even before that, before the Anthony Hernandez fight, Kopylov was on a bit of a streak. So he came into the UFC, immediately lost twice, and then goes on a 4-fight win streak, all finishes, brutal finishes as well. And then he loses to Hernandez, beats Almeida, and then beats Chris Curtis. So I think that Hernandez, that win over Kopylov, 1, was good at the time, and 2, is aging well as Kopylov remains to be a good contender. The Michel Pereira fight's a bit weird. I kind of was hoping that he'd actually get the finish over Michel Pereira, but he didn't. He did. Don't get me wrong, it is a ground and pound finish, but it was essentially just a mercy stoppage from the referee because Michel was pissing blood everywhere. It's not like he really got a submission or he really mounted crazy ground and pound that led to a finish. It was just 5 rounds of it. You'd seen enough, and Michel Pereira was just proving that he was only capable of defending, not mounting any offense. So that fight was just going to be 3 more minutes of brutality if they were to let it go on. So fair enough that they stopped it, but Brendan Allen, man, is I don't like him, but he's a very underrated UFC talent. So he comes into the UFC, goes 1, 2, 3 fights in a row, loses to Strickland by KO, then he gets 2 more fights in a row, and then he loses to Chris Curtis. And then after that Chris Curtis fight, goes finish, decision, finish, 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 decision. All of those finishes were rear naked chokes. All of them. And Hernandez has good grappling, so I do wonder whether he will be capable of beating Hernandez by finish, because of, I don't know if he can get, he's got a really good rear naked choke, but I don't know if he'll be able to get Anthony Hernandez in a rear naked choke, which is why I'm probably going to have to stick with a Brendan Allen. And then he fought Imavov, obviously, and lost a decision to him, and he really struggled with Imavov on the ground. Imavov's grappling is not that insane, and Brendan Allen really just wet blanketed him and couldn't get a lot of mounted offense and submission attempts. Even, it was a bit of an abysmal performance on the behalf of Brendan Allen, if you ask me. So I'm going to pick Brendan Allen still. But I'm going to say it's obviously it's a 3-round fight, like I said. I'm going to say he gets it by decision. Okay, moving on to the third fight down. Rob Font versus Gene Matsumoto. Very quick and simple with this one. I'm going to say Gene Matsumoto is a pretty surging prospect right now. Obviously, he's 16-0, completely untouched. There is a 12-year age gap between these two, okay? Gene's 25, Rob's 37. Gene is shorter and has less reach, but I feel like Gene's overall capabilities across the board are just going to be better, and they're going to get him into enough of a good fight with Rob Font where he can mix it up and force Font into areas that he's not going to do well in. I feel like Font might still be able to beat him on the feet, if not through the whole fight, still at times. But I'm going to trust in Gene Matsumoto here, being on the streak that he's on. He's coming to the UFC, Contender Series decision win, and then he got a choke. He choked out Dan Argueta, and then he got that decision over Brad Katona, which was a very, very fun fight. Whereas Rob Font is coming off of the Cheetah Vera decision loss. Then he beat Adrian Yanez, which was like, whoa, Rob Font's low-key back, but then has that sleepy fight with Corey Sandhagen. Obviously, it's Corey Sandhagen's fault, kind of, because he had an injury and decided to grapple the whole time, but how the fuck are you going to get out-grappled by Corey Sandhagen, man? That's really questionable, Font. if Sanhagen could out-grapple you, I feel like G Matsumoto can probably out-grapple you. Just saying. And then he went on to lose to Figgy after that in a fun fight, but still lost the fight. And then he beat Kyler Phillips. So he did recently get a fraud check over Kyler Phillips. And he looked really good in that fight. But I feel like I want to say more than Rob Font looked good in that fight. Kyler Phillips just looked shit in that fight, if that makes sense. So I'm going to go ahead and pick G Matsumoto here. I might even take a bit of a gamble here and say, so Gene's got a few submissions here, right? He's got 6 submissions on his record. I think I might trust in his ability to obviously not stand and bang with Rob Font the entire time, unless it's working, in which case that'll be very impressive to see. But I'm going to go ahead and say he probably grapples his way to victory with Rob Font, and if he does so, may get himself a submission victory. So I'm going to say G Matsumoto by submission. Okay, the people's main event of this card, bro. Gene motherfucking Silva versus Melsik Baghdasaryan. I'm telling you right now, this is going to be a fight. And I say this not only because it's Gene Silva, but because Melsik Baghdasaryan is a fun fucking fighter. So Melsik is 8-2, Gene is 14-2. The height difference is 2 inches in favor of Melsik Baghdasaryan. Gene Silva is not pretty short, but 5'7" isn't a big featherweight, and 5'9" is a pretty decently sized featherweight for Melsik Baghdasaryan. But the reach advantage is only 1 inch for Melsik, so he's not got as good of a reach advantage over his own height the way that Gene Silva does, but it will still be an advantage overall for him. The age difference is the biggest discrepancy though, with 28 years old for Gene Silva and 33 for Melsik Baghdasaryan. Now, I'm not going to let that be too much of a deciding factor, because 33 is, if anything, prime and pretty dumb to use as an age factor that says he's too old to win. You know, that's not really how this works. But Gene Silva does have that younger, hungry guy sort of advantage. That's what I'll say. But I'm not going to make it a big criteria point to rest my laurels on. So Melsik Baghdasaryan has fought in the UFC 4 times. He has a finish, a decision, and 2 decisions, but he did lose to Josh Cutelaba by rear naked choke. Now, it's not a horrible loss to have, but it's not a great one, because ever since that fight, so Josh Cutelaba came into the UFC, goes Jalen Turner loss, Charles Jourdain split decision, then he gets 1-2 decisions, and then beats Melsik by finish, the only guy that Josh Cutelaba got a finish over in the UFC, and then loses a decision to Lerone Murphy, loses a decision to Danny Silva. Oh, damn, that's kind of rough. He was pretty new to the UFC at this time, no? It was Danny Silva's UFC debut. Yeah. Oh, Danny was the guy that fought Angel Pacheco on the Contender Series. Yeah, that's not horrible, but he was an unproven guy at the time. And then Cutelaba lost to Ricardo Ramos after that. I feel like from memory, that's a robbery. I feel like this is the fight that I believed was a robbery in favor of, I'm pretty sure Josh Cutelaba did win that fight against Ricardo Ramos, and it was very unfairly scored, but still made it very close with a guy that is not super proven, has a fair few losses in the UFC. He's 8-5 in the UFC. Yeah, so I'm going to say, obviously, Melsik is still talented, but he does have a loss to Josh Cutelaba, which is his only finish in UFC. A bit questionable. Maybe it was short notice. I don't know. I can check right now, actually, by looking at Josh Cutelaba's record to see if he had a cancer fight before that. It was not. It wasn't. Unless it was organized last minute, it wasn't a fill-in. It wasn't like a Melsik Baghdasaryan jumped in on 2 weeks' notice to fill in for a fight or something like that. Then he beats Tucker Lutz, which is, sure, you should beat Tucker Lutz. He's literally 1-3 in the UFC. He was 1-2 at the time he fought him. He got finished by Daniel Pineda and lost a decision to Pat Sabatini. So, yep, you should beat that guy. But fair enough. So he's not the worst contender. That's what I'll say. He's not the worst. But mainly the reason this is fun is because of the fight styles. Melsik is a kickboxer, and he makes shit scrappy, and he's pretty brutal in his techniques. He, from memory, has really, really heavy body kicks. And here we go. He's actually fought in K1 before. He's got 2 kickboxing fights in K1. This one's not K1, but he's got 1 K1 fight and another kickboxing fight, and he's had 3 boxing fights as well, all in 2018, 2016, 2017. So that's before he was even doing MMA. He had 1 MMA fight, lost it, and then went to do kickboxing and boxing. Came back to MMA, went 7 fights in a row, and then lost to Josh Cutelaba. So, like I said, it's not the worst, but I am going to edge it to, Gene Silva here, because my man is just, I think he's on a 14, he's on a 1, 2, it'll tell me up here, 11 fight win streak for Gene Silva right now. So he went 3-2 in his first 5 fights, and then since then, he went round 1 finish, 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 round 1 finish. Got into the Contender Series, won a decision, got into the UFC, round 1 finish. Missed weight against Charles Jourdain, then round 2 finish, and got a round 2 finish over him, sorry. And how much did he miss it by? It wasn't much, was it? It was 1.5 pounds, so it's a decent bit, but it's not horrible. He went up and fought Judoba at lightweight on short notice. And that fight was incredible. If you have not seen Judoba versus Gene Silva, that is the one fight I will recommend you go and watch before this weekend. Holy fuck, that is a good fight. And now he's fighting Melsik Baghdasaryan back down at featherweight. I don't know if obviously the weigh-ins haven't happened yet. I don't know if he's going to miss weight. I hope not. Hopefully he makes weight for featherweight this time, and he can stay there, because I really want him to stay at featherweight. If he can make that weight class, he's a good height for it. He's better off staying down there. So we'll see how it goes this weekend, but I'm going to pick Gene Silva probably by a pretty brutal KO, if I'm going to be honest. And I'm going to guess that it comes in, I want to say round 2, but something about this is giving me the feeling that we're going to see Gene Silva at his peak here. Judoba fight was short notice. Charles Jourdain missed weight. The Weston Wilson fight was probably a bit of a more clear version of a real prime Gene Silva. And that was a round 1 finish, but it's obviously Weston Wilson. I'm going to take a bet here and say round 1 finish for Gene Silva. Okay, next fight down on the card. So the final fight of the main card, we have Alonzo Menifield versus Julius Walker. Now, I've heard apparently that this Julius Walker guy is a bit of a fucking contender, if I'm not wrong. So he's 6-0 obviously. He had a bit of a weird amateur career, 3 losses and 7 wins in his amateur career. All decisions, to be fair, I'll give him that, and all of his wins, bar his last amateur fight, which was in 2022, were by finishes. And they were all between 2020 and 2022. That's pretty insane. He went pro in 2023, fought twice in that year, got 2 round 1 finishes over cans, but that's okay, it's your first 2 pro fights. Then he fought another can and got a round 1 finish over him as well in 2024. And then he fought a 6-1 guy and got a round 2 finish over him in 2024 as well. Again in 2024, fights a 7-5 guy, and gets a round 1 finish over him. Again, sweet. And then he fights a 20-11 guy as also in 2024. So he fought 4 times last year and got another round 1 finish over the 20-11 guy. Still not a great record, but 20-11 is better than someone that would be 10-5, for example. You know, it's a bit harder to have a record like that for a long period of time. You're going to end up fighting some good competition along the way. Let's see so he's been in the LFA before. This guy that he beat, Myron Dennis, the 20-11. He's fought names like, let's see if I recognize anyone from his LFA career. Ryan Spann in the LFA, lost him in the first round obviously, but he's fought Ryan Spann before. And that's it. That's the only real name I recognize. There's probably some other ones in here maybe. He fought on the Ultimate Fighter before as well. This Myron Dennis guy got a win in there too. Lost his second fight in there, but got a win in there initially. Fought in Bellator at one point as well. So this guy's fought a bit of a who's who. And Julius Walker just finished him in the first round at the end of last year. So he's fighting Alonzo Menifield, which I'm going to say is a very finishable guy. Alonzo's 6 foot tall. Julius is 6'4" with an 81-inch reach. That's really fucking good, whereas Alonzo has a 76-inch reach. 37 years old as well for Alonzo Menifield. He's getting really fucking old, and this guy's 25. 25. His name is Juicebox as well, and he looks shredded, so that's a bit of a fucking on-the-nose name, but tis what it is. And Alonzo, correct me if I'm wrong, lost his last 2 fights. Got knocked out by Carlos Ulberg in 20 seconds. Bit of a questionable bullshit one, I'll admit. Not bullshit, it's not the right word, but you can't hate him for it because it's 12 seconds. If you get knocked out that quickly, it's not really like the guy worked you down for a minute and a half and then eventually found the KO on you. He just got flash knocked out at the start of the fight. But it was because of Alonzo's dumbass fucking game plan to just bull rush Carlos Ulberg at the beginning, so that was fucking stupid, and you got knocked out for it. And then he got knocked out by Azamat Murzakanov, and that was a pretty rough one too from memory. So going to go ahead and say Julius Walker comes into the UFC, makes a good debut, puts an impression on the UFC fan base, and gets a, I want to say round 1 KO because he's got a lot of round 1 KOs, but I'll give Alonzo a bit of credit and say maybe he's going to come with a bit of a smart game plan, looking to get a finish back on his record here and not get cut from the UFC, and say that he probably lasts to the second, maybe third round, but I'm going to say second round finish for Julius Walker. Okay, next fight on the card. This is the first prelim, and boy, this is actually a very, very fun fight. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, anyone, if you remember, you may not, but I'm pretty sure after after Ibo Aslan's last fight, this is the fight that I said I wanted to see. So it's Ion Cutelaba versus Ibo Aslan. These guys are both, I say both. Ibo Aslan's only lost one fight, and he got that win back over the guy when he got to the UFC. But Cutelaba is a Michael Johnson style, Terrence McKinney style, you know, finish or be finished at times. He's obviously had decisions in his career, but like the amount he's got 13 KO wins, and then 3 KO losses, 2 submission wins, 4 submission losses, and then 3 decisions and 2 decisions in terms of wins and then losses, and 1 DQ. So out of his, 28 fight career, 29 fight career, he's got 7 losses by KO, 7 losses by finish, and 15 wins by finish, and only 5 wins and losses by decision. So he's a finish or be finished guy for the most part. Especially, it was pre-UFC, he was completely like that. It's only been since he got to the UFC that he's had decisions. So that's obviously also preferable. But I'm going to go ahead and say here, as much as I like Cutelaba, 7-9-1 in the UFC, yeah, not great, could be better. Recently as well, very rough run, like knocked out by Ankalaev, obviously in the first round, but it was a bullshit stoppage. If you've seen that fight, you know it. And then in the second fight in the rematch, actually got knocked out really badly. A split draw with Dustin Jacoby, a unanimous decision over Devin Clark, excuse me. Round 1 loss to Ryan Spann by guillotine. Round 1 loss to Johnny Walker by rear naked choke. Round 2 loss to Kennedy Nuzachukwu. And then a round 1 win over Tanner Bosa. And then a decision loss to Philip Lins. I don't love that at all. Philip Lins is 4-2 in the UFC. He lost to Tanner Bosa and Andrei Arlovsky in his debut. Came back 2 years later and beat Prachnio, Ovin St. Peru, I don't know who Maxim Grishin is, and then Cutelaba. Granted, Philip Lins has fought Vadim Nemkov before and stuff like that. He did really well in Bellator at a time. Although I say really well, got a title fight. Oh no, it wasn't. This is pre-title Vadim Nemkov. Okay, yeah, questionable. He also went to the PFL. He did win a PFL title, to be fair to him, but that was in 2018. He came back over a year later in the UFC and then lost to Arlovsky. So really questionable, man. And Cutelaba just lost to him. So I think I'm going to go ahead here and stick with my gut and say Ibo Aslan, even though I think he's due for a fraud check, because we don't even really know if Aslan has that much. Like that Anton Turkulic fight in his UFC debut, which was against the guy that he lost to, his one loss was when he got that loss back off his record. It was questionable, man. Like, it just, he went to the third round with Anton. Anton is really fucking chinny. He gets knocked out. He's been knocked out 4 times in the UFC, I think. He's literally 0-4 in the UFC. He got round 1 choked out by Gelton Almeida in his debut. Then he lost a decision to Vitor Petrino. And then he got knocked out by Tyson Pedro. And then it took Ibo Aslan until the third round, after he'd been on a 3-fight losing streak, to knock him out. So questionable, but it is what it is. After that Turkulic fight that Ibo Aslan had, the first one, he went on a 1-2-3 fight, 1 round finish streak, round 1 finish streak, excuse me. And then he went on to the Contender Series, got a round 1 finish there, and then came into the UFC and had that Turkulic fight, and he won it. And then that Raffael Cerqueira fight in his last fight at UFC 308 was impressive. But again, A bit of a weird one because Cerqueira just didn't have a game plan and just stood there and became a punching bag, and it was a 50-second fight. Granted, it was something like 30 punches thrown in like 8 seconds or something, or more, 40 punches, something like that for Aslan. He threw some ridiculous combo and just landed over and over and over and over again on Raffael Cerqueira, and eventually the referee just saw enough. It was a standing TKO. He didn't even knock him out or knock him down, but the fight was over. You could tell the fight was over. So I'm excited to see this fight. I think it's going to be very scrappy, I'm not going to say back and forth, but as long as it lasts, they will probably both just stand bang with each other. To be honest, that's the kind of fight I'm expecting. But I'm going to go ahead here and say that Ibo Aslan's going to pass the Cutelaba test. If I have to choose a method, I'll say Ibo by round... I want to say round 1 finish, could be round 2. Okay, now we're going to get to the last part of the card, and like I warned you of at the start of the video, this is where it gets a lot less intelligible, and I'm going to be talking for a lot shorter periods of time about these guys, okay? But I'll still do my best to look at their records and give you my best attempts at a prediction of these fights. So, next up we have FIli versus Melquizael Costa. I feel like I said that right. He's the guy with the freaky. He's pale as shit. He's got vitiligo, so he's got a very pale face, and he has bright colored hair. Just is a strange look. I hate to say that. It's no offense. Obviously, it's a medical condition, but he looks like a crazy dude. And he's had a bit of an awkward run in the UFC. So comes into the UFC, choked out by Thiago Moises, which isn't the worst. Wins over Austin Lingo in a decision, which is good to beat Austin Lingo. Then he gets finished by Ryan Garcia, Steve Garcia. Steve Garcia beats him in the second round by ground and pound, which is not the worst guy to get a finish loss to, but still, you lost to him, and you're at that point 1 and 2 in the UFC. And then he fights this fucking, I've never even heard of this guy, Shailan Nuadenbieka, who was 39 and 11. And I think that was him. So he was 3 and 2 in the UFC at the time, and then Melquizael beat him, but still not great. This is a guy that Josh Culibao beat, and Rongju has beat as well, and Steve Garcia himself had also beat him before that. So interesting one, but I think I'm going to have to go ahead here and say that FIli is, while he's chinny, Melquizael he's had 2 KO losses, 2 submission losses, 3 decisions. He's literally had 7 KOs, 7 submissions, and 7 decisions. So that's kind of weirdly, my autistic brain likes the uniform of that, but still. I don't know. He's 5'10". He's got a 71-inch reach. He's got 1 inch positive. That's okay. FIli is 5'11" with a 74. It's in his favor. Andre's only 34. He's only 34 years old. Melquizael is 28, so he does have that advantage. And Philly's coming off of a KO. Oh no, he beat Cub Swanson in their last fight. That's right, by split decision, and that was a very back and forth fight. He did get knocked out by Dan Ige recently, but that's Dan Ige. Not the worst guy to get knocked out by, to be completely fucking honest. Before that, he had a rough run, lost to Bryce Mitchell by decision, no contest with Daniel Pineda from iPokes, knocked out by Joe Anderson Brito, split decision over Bill Algio, unanimous decision lost to Nathaniel Wood, and then Lucas Almeida, round 1 knockout. Dan Ige got knocked out in the first round. So, again, Philly's another guy that I'll say is also somewhat of a Michael Johnson of the featherweight division. Not quite as much of a finish or get finished, but definitely of a win-lose, and weirdly high-level wins at times. Bill Algio's a great win to have. Charles Jourdain's a great win to have. Who else has got wins over early in his career? He beat Artem Lobov. He's lost, but he has lost to most of the big names he's fought. That's the thing. Like, those are his big wins. Listen to his big losses. Max Holloway, Yair Rodriguez, Calvin Kattar, Michael Johnson himself, and ironically that was a split decision. Neither of them got a finish there. Sadiq Youssef, Bryce Mitchell, Joe Anderson Brito, Nathaniel Wood, Dan Ige. Every single time this guy fights a big name, he loses. But Melquizael, Costa is not a big name. And the last time that Andre lost to a guy that wasn't somewhat of an upcoming talent, big name guy, was I guess Nathaniel Wood, I guess. But even still, Nathaniel Wood, bit of an upcoming prospect. I guess Brito maybe wasn't as proven at that point in time yet, right? That was Brito's first fight in the UFC, or second fight in the UFC after Brito had just lost to Bill Algeo. So maybe, but even still, that loss has aged quite well, as Brito's had a really good win streak since then. I'm going to go ahead and still keep my pick with what I'm thinking, and my heart is telling me though. I'm going to say FIli gets it done over Melquizael. He could get a finish, but I feel like I'm going to say this one goes to a decision, and it'll be a decision win by Andre FIli. Okay, below that, I literally don't know either of these guys. I've heard of them both, and I know of them. So Nick Klein, obviously he was on the Ultimate Fighter recently, right? The Contender Series, sorry. That's where I've seen him. He got a round 1 rear naked choke over Geraldo Souza. Other than that, don't have anything else to go off of besides his regional career, which I don't recognize any names of. He's fought some okay records. He's got a loss to a 2-1 guy early in his career, but how's that guy done since then? 4-2-1. Not good. Not good. That doesn't age well. Don't love that. Mansur and he's 6-1 at the time, and in his amateur career, he did decent in his amateur career. He went 7-1. Mansur Abdul-Malik, however. Oh, let me look at this height difference real quick. So this is a middleweight fight. 6-1 for Nick Klein versus 6'2" for Mansur Abdul-Malik, but he's got an 80-inch reach at 6'2". That is fucking insane. So he's 74 inches tall with a 6-inch positive ape index. 6 inches reach over his height. Whereas, hey, look, not bad actually. Nick Klein is 6'1" with 77. That's still good. So he's got a 5-inch positive. He's 73 inches tall with 70. Oh, sorry. He's 73 inches tall with a 77. So he's got 4-inch positive. So wait, did I get Mansur's wrong? He's 74. No, I got that right. Sorry, yeah. 4-inch positive for Mansur, for Nick Klein versus 6-inch positive for Mansur. The age is essentially the same. Nick is 29, whereas Mansur is 27. I feel like I like the look. Obviously, the undefeated record just is a good, always does make you look better, and it makes it easier to call you in a prediction. The competition that Mansur has fought is not as good as the competition that Nick Klein has fought. I will admit that. Nick Klein fought a 2-0 he fought Cairns in the first two. Then he fought a 2-0, 2-1, lost to him, 12-4, and then 22-21. Oh god! And then got to the Contender Series and beat a 9-1. Mansur fought 0-1, 0-0, 2-5, 2-2. It's your first 4 fights. Bit questionable once you get past that third fight, but I can allow it. But then he gets into the LFA and he's 4-0, and he's fighting a 1-0 guy. These are all first round finishes for him though, so that's good. You should be beating these guys that quickly. And then he gets a 6-1 opponent in the Contender Series, goes to a second round for the first time in his career, and still gets a finish though over him. And he was 5-0. That guy, oh no, sorry, the guy was 6-1. Since then, that guy has not fought. Okay. And then he gets into UFC and gets a round 1 finish over Dusko Todorovic, who was 12-4 at the time. And when was that? That was November. That was on what card was this? This was Magny vs Prates. Right. Oh, I do remember that actually, I believe. Whereas Nick Klein has not made his UFC debut yet after his Contender Series appearance in October last year. So I feel like this will be interesting. These guys are both very fresh meat to the UFC. So we'll have to see. They both fought in the same season of the Contender Series as well. But Mansur was really quick to jump on the gun and get himself into the UFC for his debut. I really got to say it, the reach advantage and height advantage and age advantage all go towards Mansur. He's undefeated. He gets all round 1 finishes. Nick Klein has round 1, then a decision, then a round 3 finish loss, then a round 3 finish win, and then a round 1 finish win, round 1 finish win. So they're both finishes. I'll admit that. They're both finishes, and I like that. So this fight's probably not going to make it out of this second round, I'm going to say. But I'm going to go ahead and stick with Mansur Abdul-Malik here. Let's say they're all knockouts. All of his finishes are KOs except for one by submission. So I'm going to go ahead and say Mansur Abdul-Malik by knockout in probably the second round. Okay, below that, Ricky Simón versus Javid Basharat. I think this is going to be pretty clean cut for me. I'm going to go with Javid Basharat here. Ricky Simón isn't a total fraud, but he's on a big loss streak right now. So he got knocked out by Song Yadong, and then he got decisioned by Mario Batista, and then decisioned by Vinicius Oliveira. I do remember that fight. So he's fought a bit of a good run in the last 3 fights, don't get me wrong. Okay, those are 3 really good losses to have, but he's 32, whereas Javid's 29. The height advantage is 3 inches in favor of Javid. Oh, excuse me, sorry, my phone's going off. 3 inches, 5'9" for Javid Basharat versus 5'6" for Ricky Simón. Ricky does have 1 inch reach advantage. Fuck me, Javid Basharat, you've got a even reach with your height. That's not the best, but sure. He's on a win, and then a no contest over Victor Henry, of course, and then he got a decision loss to Ayman Zahabi, which I don't love. But Ricky Simón, prior to those 3 fights that he's been lost in right now, he did come with the UFC. He beat Marab, and then beat Montel Jackson, Rani Yahya, lost to Uriah Faber by knockout, lost to Rob Font by decision, then decision win over Ray Borg, beat Gaetano Perello by a finish, Brian Kelleher decision. He beat a Sun Sao by knockout in round 2. Then he beat Jack Shaw in round 2. So up until his last 3 fights, he was 8-2 in the UFC. He's on a bit of a rough run right now. We are talking about his last win was 3 years ago when he was 29. So I don't know. I do kind of want to pick Javid Basharat at this one, but Javid is the worst of the 2 Basharat brothers. If I'm not wrong. Oh my god, my phone stopped going off. I'm gonna say, I feel like, you know what, I'm gonna flip a little bit on this. I think I'm gonna say Ricky Simón might get a comeback here. Yeah, man, maybe by decision. So yeah, and it was a decision that Basharat lost in his last fight. He obviously does have all decision wins in the UFC, but he's got a lot of finishes early in his career. Like, they were almost exclusively finishes, and almost all early as well. But I think I'm going to trust here in a little bit of a fraud check from Ricky Simón over Javid Basharat. So let's say decision win for Ricky Simón. Below that, so we have Austin Vanderford versus Nikolay Veretennikov. I think Austin Vanderford fought in the Contender Series last. No, this is his UFC debut, I believe. Correct. Oh no, LFA was his last fight. He's fought in the Contender Series, but he didn't get signed. Interesting. He fought early and didn't get signed. This is when he was 4-0, and then he went to Bellator and went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in a row at Bellator, and then lost to Gegard Mousasi in February 2022. He has a win over Fabian Edwards as well. That's not a terrible win at all. Fabian's not greatest, but that's a pretty good win for Bellator standards, especially. And then he got knocked out twice in a row in Bellator by Gegard and then by Aaron Jeffrey, who I've not heard of, but is on a bit of a rough run since then. That guy lost to Baralho in the Contender Series earlier, and then Vanderford beat him, and then he lost to Fabian Edwards. So yeah, so this is a bit of an awkward one, bit of a tough one to call. And then he came into the LFA and got a round 1 finish over a 13-7 guy. It's okay, but not the best. However, Nikolay Veretennikov is 12-5. Let's give the stats first. 6'1" and 75 inches of reach. So that's a 2-inch positive reach for Nikolay. He's 35 years old though. Austin he's 5'11". Oh, so there's a 2-inch height advantage with a 1-inch height reach advantage for Nikolay. But they're both old. Vanderford is 34. Yeah. So Veretennikov fought in the UFC in his first fight against Danny Barlow, and he lost that one. Danny Barlow is now 9-0. I am kind of liking Nikolay lost to Michael Morales. That was his... Oh, wow. So this Nikolay guy wins his first fight, loses 3 in a row, and then goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 fights in a row. Gets on the Contender Series, loses to Morales, goes back to the local scene, gets 1, 2, 3 wins in a row over decent records, not bad, 13-7, 6-2, and 9-2, not bad at all. And then he comes into UFC and loses to Danny Barlow. I feel like he's lost both of his UFC appearances, but I think Morales and Danny Barlow aren't bad names to have losses to. Austin Vanderford also has also has only losses over good names, but I don't know. I feel like the slight height advantage I do like as well. Maybe this is a tough one to pick. This is very much a bit of a coin flip for me, but I don't know. I like something about the slight UFC experience from Nikolay, and it being a split decision loss to Danny Barlow and a unanimous decision loss to Michael Morales, who are, I believe, both finishers. Yeah, to be honest. Danny Barlow's before that was on a round 1 finish, lost a... Oh, that's a combat jiu-jitsu fight. He was on a round 1 finish, round 1 finish, round 1 finish, round 3 finish, and then first split decision win over Nikolay. And he missed weight for that fight as well, by 0.3 pounds, so not really, didn't really miss weight. And Michael Morales, prior to that fight with Nikolay, literally went decision in his first round. So okay, this is Michael Morales' career: finish, decision, finish. Then he meets Nikolay and gets a decision to him. After that, finish, decision, finish. So. I think I like it. Nikolay's got all finishes by KO as well. He's got 2 decisions, 1 submission, and 9 KOs. I feel like Vanderford, having been knocked out in the first round twice in a row in the last 3 years as well, is a lot better than Nikolay having 2 decision losses, and that's all he's lost in the last 11 years, actually. 2014. So, yeah, I like that. I'm going to say Nikolay Veretennikov gets a knockout win over Austin Vanderford. Let's go ahead and say second round. Okay, below that, Nursulton Ruziboev versus Eric McConico. I'm not really going to have much to say about this one. Nursulton's had some weird run in the UFC. He had brutal-ass entry to the UFC and then a bit of a fraud check. Well, not fraud check, I'll say, but unlucky run after that. So, Nursulton Ruziboev. He went into the UFC, got a round 1 finish over Bruno Ferreira, brutal, and then he got a round 1 knockout over Cejudo, which was a bit annoying because it was an eye poke finish, realistically. Then he got beat by Joaquin Buckley in a decision pretty badly where he was being grappled. But this guy's got a lot of losses on his record. He's 34-9, but he has 25 round 1 finishes. That's pretty fucking insane. He's fought a lot of cans, and he's fought cans up until he got to the UFC, so that is questionable. But Ferreira's a good guy to beat, and Dumas isn't too bad of a guy to beat, even though he didn't really beat him properly, but he did lose to Buckley. However, Buckley, as we know now, is a really, really good contender at welterweight. Eric McConico, however, so there's going to be a big disadvantage here that I'm going to point out. McConico is 6 foot tall, but he's got a 75-inch reach, so that's 3-inch positive reach advantage over his own height. And he's 34 years old. Ruziboev is 31 with a 76-inch reach, so he's only got a 1-inch reach advantage, but Ruziboev is 6'5". He's a 6'5" welterweight. So now that I'm seeing that Eric is 6 foot and 34, I don't love that. In terms of his record, not bad, man. Not bad. He's got recently... He lost 2 fights in 2019, and since then, they're both knockout losses, and his only losses too. Since then, he got a round 1 finish over a can, decision over a can, a round 3 finish over a can, and then he got a decision win over a 10-4 guy, not bad, and then a round 1 finish again over a can. Those cans that I just read out were 5-7-1, 6-5, 15-10, and 28-20. Yeah, I think I'm going to take Ruziboev here. I'm going to go ahead and just say it's going to be the standard Ruziboev by a brutal round 1 finish. Okay, in the very last fight on the card, this is actually a pretty fun one to end off the night. we've got Modestas, Bukauskas versus Raffael Cerqueira. Now, Raffael Cerqueira, as I mentioned earlier in the night, was the guy that Ibo Aslan knocked out in 50 seconds, so it was a bit of a questionable entry to the UFC for him. This is a chance for him to make a bit better of a statement of his talent and ability in this sport, I guess, but in this promotion, of course, because he was 11-0 prior to the UFC, and he'd fought at heavyweight, and he had a wide array of knockouts, if I'm not wrong. Body kick, head kick, KO, arm triangle, punch, KO, arm triangle, body kick, KO, KO, all round one though. Round one, decision. Round one, round two, round two, round one, round one, round one, round one. And that was going back and forth between heavyweight and light heavyweight, but in the same order. I just read to you his whole, from start to finish, of his finishes, but, or his record. I said the decision as well. But the records from bottom to top were 0-1, 0-0, 2-3, 4-1, 10-6, 17-9, 9-7. And at this point, he's 7-0, fighting a 0-1, 4-1, 1-1, 6-3. Not good. I don't like it. And then he loses to Ibo Aslan badly in his debut. I'm going to go ahead and say Modestas Bukauskas, coming off a really good win over Marcin Prachnio, did lose to Vitor Petrino in his last fight before that, but prior to that, he had a UFC run where he went round one retirement actually. So Andreas Michailidis quit on the stool. He got knocked out by Jimmy Crute, split decision over Oleg Jacek, and then got knocked out by Khalil Roundtree. Got sent back to Cage Warriors and got a decision and then a knockout in a title fight as well in Cage Warriors. He got a knockout. Then he comes back to the UFC, beats Tyson Pedro in a decision, beats Zach Palga in a decision, gets knocked out by Vitor Petrino, but then he beats Marcin Prachnio. I don't hate this at all. So for Modestas Bukauskas, I think this is a very winnable fight. He's 6'3". Cerqueira is also 6'3". Cerqueira's reach is 76. Bukauskas is 78. But Bukauskas is 31. Cerqueira's 34. Pretty much every advantage that you can give goes to Bukauskas. Experience, age, height, reach. All the height's the same, but it's not a disadvantage. It doesn't go to the other guy. He's 4-4 technically in the UFC, but I mean, being 4-4 in the UFC isn't that bad when your 4 losses are Jimmy Crute, Oleg Jacek by split decision. So Oleg Jacek isn't great, but split decision. So Jimmy Crute by knockout, Oleg Jacek by split decision, Khalil Roundtree by knockout, and Vitor Petrino by knockout. Those 3 knockout finishes are all very talented guys. So I'm going to go ahead here and say for the final fight, let's say Modestas Bukauskas, maybe by a decision. Let's say that he manages to drag Raffael out of that first round and kind of just walk him to the end of the fight. And maybe Cerqueira has a bit more of a good performance than he did in the last fight against Ibo Aslan, but still doesn't manage to quite bring the level of prowess and talent that he's going to need to beat someone like Modestas Bukauskas. So decision win here for Bukauskas. Guys, that is going to be it for this prediction video. Thank you very much for joining me. I hope you did enjoy. Be sure to leave a like, subscribe, throw on notifications so you don't miss any uploads or live streams like the Fight Companion that will be this weekend. Be sure to join me for it. I'll be here for the majority of this card. Let me double check what time this is at. Yeah, it's a bit of a later in the afternoon one for me, so that's good. I probably will jump in at, I'm going to watch obviously the whole card, but in terms of my live stream, I'll probably jump in around the Cutelaba fight. So you can probably expect me to be there for the whole main card and then just the start of the prelims. So maybe even earlier. If I feel like jumping on earlier, I'll jump on earlier. But I definitely want to be there for the Menifield versus Walker fight, the Gene Silva versus Baghdasaryan, Rob Font versus Matsumoto, Allen versus Hernandez, and Cejudo versus Yadong. And I'd like to see Cutelaba versus Islam because I predict that's going to be a really fun one to get a reaction to live. So be sure to join me there, guys. I hope you did enjoy this prediction video. Let me know in the comments, I guess, if any of these, if you put any bets on based on my predictions, and if you won any bets, you can let me know after the card. I'd love to see you guys in the Fight Companion live stream. It'll be very fun to have you there. It's always a good time when the chat is flowing throughout the stream, and we're gonna have a lot of fun fights to talk about. It's a fight night card, obviously, not a pay-per-view, but there is plenty to chat about and discuss throughout the entire card. So let me know, guys, what you think of these predictions in the comments. Be sure to join me for the live stream. And I'll see you guys all in the next Mixed Martial Arts video. Goodbye.